I was at my local quilt store the other day and I saw all these amazing layer cakes. I don't know if you're familiar with these. They're 10-inch tile squares. This one is manufactured by Moda. Their brand name is called Layer Cake. They have trademarked that. You can also find them in other fabric companies do them as well. They're called tile packs. Generally, they're a 10-inch by 10-inch square. And I fell in love with this really modern collection by Brigitte Hiltlin, I believe is how you say her name. And she designs under um, Zen Chic is her design name, I believe. And the collection is called Simply Cozy. So I was really excited about this modern print. And I have the perfect pattern for this. It's called Delft Sideboard. It's beginner friendly and I can't wait to get started. So I'm hoping that you follow along. So to get started with this stealth sideboard pattern that I've designed, you'll need a layer cake. Generally, they come in 42 10-inch squares. And the nice thing about layer cakes is that you get the whole collection generally in different colorways. So that's really nice. And they're all color coordinated, so you don't have to go and try to pick out all the fabrics. So this is a really great way to be able to use a whole collection if you fall in love with the fabrics. So excited to break into this. We'll break into this in just a second. You will also need some sashing fabric. I chose this kind of swirly design. This is some of the yardage from the Simply Cozy collection. I also have an off-white here that we'll be using as an accent triangle and some black. I'm going to the backing is going to be black, and it's part of this. We'll use this in the sashing and some of the cornerstones in the sashing for this quilt. So let's get this tile pack open and start separating out our pieces. We're going to need, let's see, I can't remember right off the top of my head, but let me look here. We are going to need 20 dark and 10 light of the layer cakes for the lap size. So you'll want to go through and separate out which ones that you're going to want to use. Now, we're going to have some remaining, and like this particular one, it's a light, but there's really no print to it. So we'll set this one aside. We have this stripe and some confetti. I'm gonna, these don't have as much action to them, so I'm gonna set those aside. This is what we're gonna be using for our sashing. So again, I'm gonna set this aside. But this one will work. And now we're going into some colors here. Here's that modern circle. I'm gonna set these aside. These are so fun. The nice thing is that we don't have to use them all. So we get to pick out our favorites. And it's not that I don't like these stripes or the confetti, but I want a little bit more action and print. I will probably use these ones that don't have as much action in them for a different part of the block. We'll probably make these be the lights. This gray one is really nice. But we only got one of those. So if you could think of the dark as being the prints that there's more print to them. So like this one has a lot of print to it. So that's in this pile. And since how there's not as much print on this one, then we'll have those be our lights. So then now that we have them separated out, we can pick out 20 that we really want. And if there's a duplicate, maybe set the duplicates off to the side. And if we need to fill in gaps somewhere, then we can. You hear that rustling? That is my little Chihuahua Bodhi. I have introduced him in a couple of my other videos, and he's currently attacking a cardboard box. He's making all kinds of racket. He heard his name. He came around here and is taking a peek at me like, "Did you need something from me? I'm pretty sure you do need something from me." He's learning how to be a quilt studio dog. Okay, so there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Oh, we're going to have more than we need. So maybe like this one, there's not as much action with that one. And some of these are duplicates. So let's take the duplicates out, which I said I was going to do, and then I didn't do it. Typical of me. This is a duplicate, so we'll take that one out. Let's see how far we get. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So let's add some of our favorites back in. There's 18, 19, and 20. So these will be our dark pile. I kind of made a mess of it. And then for our lights, we're going to go with our less print, the prints that have less design in them. So there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, maybe we don't want to have as much. I'm going to pause here and get my lights together, and then I'll come back and show you what I came up with. So now I have all of my layer cake divided out. We've got our 20 darks, or what we're calling dark, even though they're not all dark, and our 10 lights. And we've got them separated into 2 different piles. So now it's time to start cutting up our layer cakes. And what I like to do is to stack them as neatly as possible and cut several at a time. This pattern is going to, you're going to be able to cut the pieces up for this quilt very quickly, and you'll be stitching up those squares in no time. So we'll just get everything lined up. I still have a pile here. I can decide whether or not I want to add the border. There is a border design for this quilt. Well, it'll just be a matter of timing and see how it goes. So I've gone ahead and arranged all of my layer cakes, and I have them stacked in 4 to 5 at a time. I have changed out my rotary cutter, so I've got a nice sharp blade, and now it's time to start cutting. So you'll notice that on the layer cakes, you have a little pinked edge, and you can leave that if you choose to, or you can trim it off. These are 10-inch blocks, and we are going to cut a 4.5-inch strip. We're going to cut 2 4.5-inch strips out of these. And I am going to go ahead and cut off the pinked edge. You can leave your strip completely intact like that, and then line up your ruler. And you'll be left with a little strip. Now, I hang on to these because I actually think that this is usable. I don't know where, but it is usable. So let's hang on to that. And I'm going to go ahead and trim off this pinked edge. It just helps keep your blocks tidy when you're piecing. Make sure you're at 4.5 inches when you're cutting these squares. And you'll want to keep the layer cake print in groupings. Again, we have a little strip here. Set that off to the side. Make sure everything's lined up. I just love these little dots. It's a bit retro, and the color palette really spoke to me. There, it was so hard to choose which layer cake I wanted to work with because Moda has some really good ones out right now, and this store really likes that as part of their offering. So I was really grateful for it. They actually asked me to bring this quilt back in so that they could display it, which of course I love that as a designer. So what you can do now that you have your layer cake divided into 4 squares is separate them. And the reason why you want to do this is because when we go to cut the other part of our block, then we can decide, well, what coordinating strip do we want to go with each square, each of these prints. And that's a lot of fun, and you get to make it your own and get creative. The nice thing is because this is a whole collection of fabrics that they're all designed to work together. So technically, each one of these is going to be a block. And I'll go ahead and cut. These are for these 4.5 inch squares, so I will cut these off camera. But let's go ahead and cut the other portion that we need. And you can see I've got these all lined up nice. And for the light colored ones, we're going to cut, we're going to subcut these blocks into 4.5 inch strips again. And I'm going off just a little bit because I'm going to cut that pinked edge off. I love these Quilter Select rulers because I can spin my ruler with my fabric underneath it. They have a little bit of a grip on the underside of it. So now we're going to cut 2.5 inch strips out of this 4.5 inch. Well, we're going to create 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles. And you want to measure really accurately for this because we have a 10-inch block here. So if we're not accurate, we won't get that last strip out. So we won't be able to cut that pinked edge off. So we'll do the same thing. We'll divide these out and stack them into groupings. And I have to say, it is so much fun coming up with the little color combinations for each one of your blocks. So we may not want to use these with, maybe this red one, maybe we don't want to put this dark. Maybe we want to wait until we have one of the lights come ahead, get cut out. I like the idea of putting this orange with the pink, so we'll do that. And now this one being light, I think that we should put a navy with it. And this is so close to this. I don't think I want that either. So I'm going to set these off to the side until I get um, a cut that I think will go really well with those. But let's go ahead and trim this light section down. And you can see how fast this goes. We'll divide these out. And keep them divided, but yet keep them together, just like so. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out the rest of my layer cakes, and then I'll show you some more cutting. I have all of my fabrics cut for this quilt, and I've gone ahead and sorted through my lights and my darks and pairing up the designs that I liked. I was trying to create some contrast, and I didn't want the blocks to be the same. So if I had a gray with a blue, I tried not to duplicate that with another blue. So like this blue down here has a pink, and this blue here, the main square, has a white with a little stripe. So that was my thinking with this. We have these off-white squares, and these will create triangles on the 4.5-inch block, and they'll go in the corners diagonally, and you'll need 8 of these for each block. So I'll start stacking those together. We'll also need 1 black square for each block. So that's all grouped together. I'm going to go ahead and group all of them together, and then I can chain piece these squares together, and that makes it go much faster. Now up here, you'll see that I've gone ahead and cut my sashing strips. So this is the center sashing, and then there is a 1-inch strip that goes on each side, and then I have my cornerstones. So those are all set to go for me once I get all of my blocks done. Now I am going to group all of my blocks the way that they need to be, and I will show you how to put together this very simple block, very beginner friendly, but yet dynamic. And I always think it's great when you can create a block for a beginner quilter or for quilters of other skill levels, that you just get to sit down at your sewing machine and just sew and watch a show, drink some coffee or tea or whatever you like, and start piecing. That is one of my favorite things to do. Find a show and just sit in peace and kind of check out and, in a way, meditate. So to start constructing our block, we're going to start with these off-white squares, and we're going to place them right sides together in opposing corners like so. And when I start piecing, I will have the stack of my blocks by my machine, and I'll just run all of these squares through the machine. I'll do one side and then I'll flip them all around and I'll do the other side and I'll do all of them at the same time. So here is a tip. When you place these squares in the corners, make sure that in the corners, make sure that they're lined up. Now, you can draw a line if you want to, but generally the sewing machines have marks on them so that you can just line your needle up on this corner and then this point on one of the marks on your sewing machine, and you'll get a nice straight line. Um, One of the tips I want to give you is that if you sew on the outside of the point, just ever so slightly, and hit the outside of the point here, when you flip this over, because we're going to trim off, when you flip this over and it's folded, then you'll get a nice clean line. Now, if for some reason you end up on this side of the line, you'll end up with a little jog. So it'll it'll be like this. This, of course, will be cut away, but you'll have a little jog, and you don't want that jog. So always stay on the outside of these points just slightly. And I will show you what that looks like once I get these sewn on. So then you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Every once in a while, I'll get one that's has a little bit of jog in it. I don't worry about it too much, but it is better if you can stay on the outside of those points. So you can see here that I have gone ahead and stitched, and you can see how I'm just off those points just ever so slightly. And I'm just showing you this one block, and then I'll do the rest of them, and uh, we'll do the finished block. I personally just like to use a pair of scissors and just eyeball the 1/4 inch and cut those triangles off. Now, if you keep these intact, these are fairly small. I'm not sure that you want to do half square triangles that small, but you could always keep those for another project, maybe create a little pin cushion or mug rug or something like that with them. And trim off your threads if you come across a thread. That always keeps your back nice and tidy. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so excited to have you. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, that would be fantastic. We always appreciate um, people subscribing to our channels. It keeps us motivated to do what we do, and it's nice when people comment on what we're doing so that they're getting value out of the information that we're providing. So that was super easy. Now we'll go ahead and flip these over and press these down like so. And we'll start setting up our block to sew on these rectangles, and they go like this. And then we'll have this black square in the center. So I've gone ahead and pressed down the triangles, so those are all pressed. So we're going to create 3 blocks with the triangle like so. And then this rectangle here, we will sew our center square to, like that. So we'll sew here, here, and here, and here. So I've gone ahead and attached my rectangles to my squares, and I have it all laid out here. What we'll do now is this rectangle and square unit that we have here will go like this. I've pressed the seams towards the rectangle, and now we can nest those seams so we'll get really nice points with that. And then with this section here of the block, we will do right sides together and we'll attach this rectangle to the other block. So we'll sew 1/4 inch here and 1/4 inch here. That I have those 2 rectangle pieces attached, we'll now attach this rectangle square unit here, and again, nesting our seams at 1/4 of an inch. I also want to recommend that you shorten your stitch length. I don't know if you know about shortening your stitch length, but it helps keep your seams from pulling apart at the raw edges. So I'm going to go ahead and sew 1/4 of an inch here. So I've gone ahead and attached those half of the block together there. And now we'll flip this over and we'll be able to nest our seams. And we just have 1/4 of an inch seam to do, and our block is complete. So our block is complete. And some tips that I can give you is just make sure that this main focal print is the point, or the arrow that is created is going towards that center square. Occasionally I've messed up and reversed it where the triangles are up here, and that is not the effect that we're going for here. So this block is complete. We have 19 of, or 20 of these total to make. We've got one done and 19 to go. So I'm going to go um, get a fresh cup of coffee, sit down with the show, and sew up some blocks, and then we'll get to organizing these on the design wall to just figure out how we want them and make our sashing units. So I have completed all of my blocks, and you can see how fun these are with this fabulous collection of fabrics. I'll set these aside for right now. And now it's time for us to create our sashing pieces. So I have these strips that are cut with the fabric, and then we will attach these black accent fabrics, um, a little border strip for the sashing, like so. Um, there are 13 of these that we will create, and then we'll subcut these into 10.5 inch rectangles, and those will be our sashing pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these. I won't bore you with that. I am going to show you how I like to cut these rather than press these long strips intact and then cut them. I'm going to cut them and then press them. I think it's a little bit easier, and your seams end up a little bit nicer. So I will show you that in the next clip. So we have all of our sashing strips sewn with the accents of the black on both sides. And I'm recommending that you go ahead and cut them before you press them open. The reason for doing this is that sometimes when you are pressing these really long strips, you'll get waves in it where the seam line isn't pressing completely straight. So this gives us a little bit more control. You'll notice here that my first cut is wrong, and so we have to toss this to the side. Yes, one miscut, and it's not going to um, mess up the process, but yeah, we do make mistakes. So make sure you line up your ruler along that raw edge so that each end is cut square. And we'll go ahead and cut up all of our sashing strips like this. And then afterwards, we'll go ahead and press them out. I have some that are pressed here, and you can see how nice these accents of the black on each side are nice and straight. They're not wobbly. I really recommend this. And you can also get them really good and flat. So I'm going to go ahead and cut everything up and get everything pressed. And then we'll get this up on the design wall, and you can see how this all lays out. It is so easy to do. I love this accent strip in this quilt. It really makes the quilt very dynamic. So now we can start laying out our sashing strips, and you're going to sew one 3.5 inch square to one of your sashing strips, and you're going to make 4 of those units, and then you'll sew all 4 of these together and then end with one final 3.5 inch square. For each row, you're going to separate out your blocks using the sashing strips. So you could do one strip and then a block, strip and a block, and do 4 of those, then sew those together, and again end with one sashing strip. When I laid this out, I tried to have it look really random and not have too many of the oranges together or too many of the navies together. And that way, with it up on the wall, I could just do each row at a time. And you can see here, I'm getting a lot of affection from Bodie. He's so excited that I'm down on the floor with him, and he's my little helper. And I just love having him around. He's just so joyful. He's such a happy little dog. And it goes together very well. But don't, stand back and take a look at it. Do you need to move things around to get the balance of the colors? It really helps make the final quilt dynamic. I'm not going to bore you with putting this whole quilt top together. In the next section, I'll show you this quilt on the long arm. Here we are the next day. I have constructed the quilt top, and the way you want to go about, I know this isn't in the previous clips that I did because I got over enthusiastic and I decided I just wanted to sit and construct my quilt. It may have been about 6 o'clock in the morning when I did it. So what you'll do is you'll construct your sashing strips that run between the rows, um, going horizontally, and then you'll construct your rows, which consists of a block and a sashing strip. And you start at one end and you work your way across. You'll then attach the sashing strip to the top and the bottom, and then the subsequent row. It's very easy construction, nesting your points so that your blocks look really nice. And quite honestly, you could do this quilt top in with cutting and piecing and final construction of the quilt top probably in a weekend, depending on how fast you sew. So there's that. So really great use of a layer cake and a weekend when you don't have, I don't know, maybe cleaning your house. I could be doing that, but I'm not. So I went ahead and loaded it on the long arm and started quilting it. You can see I used some contrasting thread on the back and I did these circle pano. I'm still learning my long arm, and I have to say, this was a real challenge. I got myself in the upside down of quilting with a computerized digital situation. So, is it the best effort? No. Can you see it from a galloping horse? No. So, we're calling it good. So, my next step is to pull it off the long arm, square it up, and get our binding on. So let's get to it. So I wanted to show you what one of my patterns looks like. So Delft Sideboard, this is a version 2.0, was originally designed for a collection for Northcott Fabrics. I wasn't able to get they do a tile pack for their 10-inch square. So I wasn't able to get that fabric, but I decided to do a version 2.0, and this is using a layer cake from Moda fabric. And you'll see that this is a full size pattern. Normally, a lot of the patterns are half size, but as a quilter, I want to have nice large pages with very clear writing where I can really follow along. Sometimes these are stapled booklets. This particular one, with the page settings, we weren't able to do a stapled booklet, but you'll see that the cutting requirements are very clear to read. I do full color. The illustrations are very clear. I spend a lot of time creating these illustrations for quilters so that you can follow along really easily. So they have headers here that tell you what part of the construction you're in. And again, full color. This pattern comes in a lap and a queen size, and you can do um, borders if you like. And then the other thing with my bindings, I like to do a double fold over. So my bindings are cut a little bit wider. But the reason why I do that is that the binding edge can be a weak point over time on a quilt, and they can get threadbare. So by doing a double fold over, you get a little extra um, wearability on your bindings. So you'll notice that. And here is a beautiful graphic of what your quilt can look like, and again, information on my tutorials on YouTube. So I wanted to show you uh, what a printed pattern looks like. And you can also get this as a PDF for an instant download, so you can start sewing right away. This pattern is one layer cake for for the lap size and some fabric. On the back, you have the fabric requirements here, really nice and clear to read. So basically, not including the backing, you would need one layer cake and 3 yards of fabric. And you have a wonderful project. This is definitely easy enough to complete in a weekend. And the lap size, I would say you would be able to easily quilt this on your standard machine. Doesn't necessarily have to go on a long arm. Patience would be required for sure, but a really fun use of layer cakes. I also did this same Delft Sideboard quilt, and I have a previous video where you can use old shirts and create your own 10-inch tile square to make a quilt out of old shirts. And I have to say that quilt turned out beautiful. So even if you are not in the market for a layer cake or a tile pack, you know, search around in the closets. You might have some old cotton shirts that can be repurposed, and it does make a really fun quilt. So I'll put the link below where you can go to my website and either pick up the printed pattern, which I send out right away, or you can do an instant download of a PDF. So another quilt completed. I have to say, I just love how Delft Sideboard turned out with this collection from Moda. Um, So don't discount those layer cakes or tile packs when you see them in the quilt shops. They're a great way to work with a whole collection of fabrics, and they all work together cohesively. You can see the finished quilt here, and I couldn't be happier with it. And just so you know, this quilt is available in a printed booklet or as a PDF. I will tell you that if you choose to do the border option, there was a edit that we had to make. So you can go to my website at tjwrightquilts.com and go to the correction page and look for the correction there. I always try to update my website, and anytime you're working with a designer's quilt pattern, you should always check to see if there are any edits that were made to the pattern before you start. Because even we do our very best, we have them tech edited, we test them, but inevitably there will be one little thing that will happen. Hopefully, it's just a little thing. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for staying to the end. And look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, happy stitching.